Yesterday, Nikon purchased RED, which I think is fair to say nobody saw coming.
My life, it's potato.
But there are two things I think will come out of this. One that's great for a particular group of people, and one that's maybe not so great for another group of people. And if you're wondering how this is even possible, well, Nikon is actually a much larger company than you think. In fact, they have ties to a lot of Japanese manufacturing company. They do deals with Intel, with Mitsubishi. And if you look at how much money Nikon made in 2023, they had a revenue of about $4 billion. Now, if you compare that to RED, which is an American manufacturing company, they have a much more niche audience that's just cinema cameras, and they made about $160 million in revenue. But if you compare that to what Canon made in 2023, they made $36 billion, and Sony, of course, being a much larger company, made $90 billion. So why didn't Sony or Canon buy RED? Well, if you go back to April of last year, April of 2023, you would know that RED was suing Nikon for infringing upon their proprietary raw compressed video format. The Nikon Z9 had implemented NRAW, which was using some sort of new compression algorithm that supposedly infringed on a patent that RED currently holds. And a lot of people were excited for this lawsuit because it potentially meant that RED would lose and then would have to give up its copyright, and that all the other camera manufacturers could suddenly start using compressed raw video. And if I had to guess what happened out of that, more than likely RED saw that it was gonna lose. Nikon said, okay, we won't press any further, but hey, let's have a discussion in the background about how maybe we can make this work for both of us. And if I had to guess, it was probably around that time where Nikon started talking to RED and say, hey, let's acquire you, let's make this work together. We've got stuff that you want, you've got stuff that we want. Nikon doesn't have any cinema cameras like Sony or what Canon has, so the two of them coming together actually does make quite a bit of sense. Now, if you read between the lines on the news release, I don't think we're going to see too many changes in the mirrorless cameras that Nikon offers or in the cinema cameras that RED offers. Like, I don't think we're gonna suddenly see a RED Komodo with photo features, or that the color science from one of the systems is gonna end up on the other, because more than likely, if you're invested into one of these systems, you like them for the features that they have, for the menus that they have, for the color science that these cameras have. And again, if you read between the lines, the news release mentions RED's proprietary raw compression technology, which obviously means that Nikon is going to be able to keep their NRAW, if not implement the same compression technology that RED is using in its RED Code RAW. If you're a Canon shooter, I don't think too much is gonna change for you. Right now, RED cameras use the Canon RF mount, and some of the Canon cameras like the R5 and the R5C use Cinema Raw Lite, so they have that more compressed raw video format. Again, I don't know what that relationship is, but I know people online seem to assume that there is a relationship and those two companies talk. If you're worried about RED switching to Z mount, I don't think that's gonna happen either. If you own a RED camera, more than likely you want that camera to continue using the same mount and the same lenses. So it would be a disservice if Nikon looked at RED and said, okay, let's switch all the cameras over. If anything, they'll offer some sort of adapter or maybe an alternate version of the same product that then uses Z mount. Z mount? Canadian, Z mount. But Sony shooters probably should be worried, because as far as I know, there's no relationship between RED and Sony. And if Nikon has anything to say about it, the Z8 and the Z9 are amazingly spec'd video cameras. The only weakness that they have is that nobody really wants to shoot on them. So if all of a sudden we get RED compressed raw codecs inside a Nikon mirrorless camera, all of a sudden what that means is we're gonna be getting video file sizes that are the same size as H.265 10-bit video files, except now they're in compressed RAW, which if you do any sort of video production is a huge advantage. The ability to change your white balance or change the gamma profile that you're shooting in are absolute game changers that really at this point, every camera should have, but the reason we don't is simply because RED has just held the patent on those compressed raw video file formats for forever. But it's really hard to know what's gonna happen. I don't think we'll see the benefits of this maybe for a few months until the next round of new cameras comes out. But if you've read something online, or if you maybe have heard something and you have thoughts about this, go ahead, leave it down in the comments below. And until the next one, grab your camera, get out, and go shoot photos.